Jefferson Robbins for NCW Life. There are 3 seats with contested races for the Wenatchee School Board this coming November election. I'm joined by one of the challengers for an at-large seat on that board, Tricia Cleek. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Can you tell me, Tricia, about yourself and what you do and what led you to make the decision to jump in this race?
Well, I'm a Wenatchee area almost native. We moved to East Wenatchee when I was 4 years old, and I grew up in the Eastmont schools mostly, with a few years at Bethesda Christian School. Went back at the end of 9th grade and finished at Eastmont and graduated from there in 1983. I pursued just various jobs for a while. Started at the college, but that really wasn't my thing at that age. I just was not into academics still at that point. So worked other jobs, sales, waitressing, lots of fun things. And then eventually got married and had 3 boys. I homeschooled my sons and learned gobs and gobs, homeschooling them, things I hadn't learned in my educational experience. So it was really rewarding for them and for me. Went back to school later, got my nursing degree at WVC, and then bachelor's at WGU, Western Governors University. So I've been a nurse for 7 years now, and I'm taking a little break because I'm really busy with politics, but hoping to continue in nursing.
Have you been observing the Wenatchee School District closely, or did you have any preconceived notions about how it operated?
I didn't. I have had almost no knowledge before running into some friends who were telling me the state of the schools, and I was just appalled. Not super surprised, because I didn't feel incredibly accomplished when I graduated from high school. I knew I hadn't worked hard for that. It wasn't any major accomplishment. Nursing school, on the other hand, is rigorous and quite the challenge. But when I was made aware of the academic state of the schools, and I'm obviously, watching the news and knowing what's going on, with ideologies being introduced in the schools, I was very concerned.
Tell me what kind of ideology concerns you have about Wenatchee School District.
Well, there's a lot of very controversial ideologies, DEI, CRT, even the social emotional learning has some aspects of Marxist ideologies. They're very divisive. There's the haves and the have-nots, and privileged and not privileged, and it just pits people against one another, which I don't think those ideologies have any place in the public school system. I believe that the public school system, being funded by taxpayers, ought to be about academics.
CRT that you mentioned stands for critical race theory, which, as I understand it, is a collegiate and doctorate level area of study involving race relations and the history of racial inequity in the United States. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is more of an umbrella planning and policy guideline for schools, and Wenatchee School District has adopted some DEI components for its own strategic planning. What is it about DEI that is troublesome, and would you see yourself rolling back any movements that the school district has made toward diversity, equity, inclusion if you were elected?
Those words all on their surface are great. I mean, diversity is obviously everything. I mean, our population, our country is very diverse. Equity, we're all for equity. And inclusion, of course we want to include everyone. But underlying those ideologies are very divisive things, like I said, about Marxism with the haves and have-nots and that kind of stuff. I just, and I don't know, I'm not familiar with what the school district is doing besides honoring those words themselves, which obviously we all agree with. But those policies, they're embedded with Marxist ideologies at their foundations when you boil them down. So my whole hope is to accomplish neutrality. We don't introduce the families are responsible for, the ideologies. Like, I believe, for instance, that people of faith have a much harder challenge because their children are being taught, things that are anti-faith, like the world just evolved, there's no God. Um, People of faith believe that God created the world and that there's male and female, and you can't change your gender. But all these other ideologies are coming down, which are causing a lot of confusion and divisiveness, and they just have no place in the public school system.
You use the term evolved. Now, evolution is a scientific fact and has been taught in schools for a long time. Are you thinking that should not be taught?
Um, we're constantly evolving, that's certainly true, but the original origin of the species, people of faith believe different things, and quite often that God, a divine creator, created the world, and that's originally how we came to being. And so when kids are taught things against that, for instance, when I was in college, my biology class, there was a paragraph in the beginning of the book that said, once upon a time, people thought there was some divine creator or something, but now we know that things just evolved. Well, that doesn't make sense to a lot of us. I don't ever walk into a home and say, wow, this just happened. That's amazing. It's obviously design. There's much design in everything. It didn't just happen. It didn't appear. It didn't, come out of nothing.
Have you reviewed the curricula for what students are being taught in Wenatchee schools?
I haven't. I know what I was taught when I was in school, and I'm assuming it's pretty much, in the public school, it's the same as like I saw in the college.
But we haven't seen a curriculum in Wenatchee School District that says there is no God, evolution just happens.
And I don't know that.
Can you identify, outside of questions of ideology, the biggest challenges facing the school district? This has been a year with a lot of financial challenge and maybe some questions concerning student achievement and whether there's going to be as many students in future years as there have been. So what's the biggest one on that front?
I don't know. They're all very heavy subjects, and enrollment, I believe, is going to continue to decline. A lot of it is stated as being mostly birth rate, but homeschooling and private schooling enrollments have jumped substantially since the COVID thing. Even if you look at the Wenatchee School District's own graph, there was just a drastic decline, and we didn't recover that after. And I've spoken to several people out in doorbelling. One was a Wenatchee School District teacher, and she took her kids out and she's homeschooling them just herself now. So you should take a huge financial hit to get them out of the schools. So the enrollment is a huge thing. The financial piece is just going to be quite a challenge, reducing the budget and everything. And if enrollment continues to decline, it's going to just continue to go down. Also, I can't remember the other thing that you asked about.
Let's see, budget for sure, enrollment decline.
As far as priorities, the academics, 71% are failing math, 65% are failing science, and 54% are failing English. I think we need to get our community to embrace a shared vision of getting involved and getting our kids quality education and doing whatever it takes, because we have a larger Hispanic population than English population. There's just a lot of challenges that we're faced with, and we need to get together and come up with a plan for how to address all these issues. The attendance is very dismal. 62% of students are attending on a regular basis. These are scary numbers. There's something wrong. I don't think that parents have confidence in the school system. If they're not making sure their kids are getting there, they obviously don't think it's important enough to make it a priority. And I think we need to address that and get everybody, like I said, rally our community to help our schools.
So more parent involvement would be something you'd want to pursue on the board?
Huge. Yeah.
Would you have managed the school district's response to the COVID pandemic differently?
That is such a tough question. There was so much divisive and confusing information. I was getting it from, both sides. I'm in the medical community as a nurse, and so I was hearing these things, and yet hearing and seeing, things that, okay, this isn't right, and following the science, which didn't, which changed every week, it seemed like. It was very, very confusing time. I think I would have hoped that as a school board member, if I was on the board at that time, I would have done what the majority of parents wanted done. Kids were not at a huge risk during the COVID thing. They just weren't. I mean, it wasn't a big thing. I got vaccinated myself, and I got COVID twice after being vaccinated. So it's really hard to know, and I do not have a exact answer of what I would have done given those circumstances.
If you'd been on the board in 2020 through 23, what kind of votes would you have taken that were different from the ones that wound up passing?
I'm not even familiar with all of those. I've watched quite a few of the back, board meetings, but I'm not up to speed on all of them for sure. I know there was just a lot of controversy, and I honestly don't know.
Some of the things that we've talked about having to do with DEI are required by state law and by state policy as it's promulgated through the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. So should Wenatchee School District simply not follow policies or laws that the board as a group decides it disagrees with?
No. We obviously have to follow the laws, but I do know that the reason school boards are they're to represent the electorate. That's the whole point of school boards. If they didn't have any leeway in those policies, there would be no use for a school board. The state would just pass down the laws, and they would just implement them however they see fit. WASDA, brings down the policies, and then you have some leeway with those. And I know I took a training course for school board, potential school board members from the Family Policy Institute of Washington, and they have a lot of model school board policies. And I think with our society being so polarized right now, its neutrality is really the best way to go. I think we should just, try to focus on academics, and I mean, we have a lot of work to do there. I don't think, that we need to. I mean, obviously, we're going to be diverse and equitable and inclusive of all, but not in ways that bring division. I mean, that's totally counterproductive, and I think there's enough division in society today.
Tricia, on July 11th, there was an outdoor public meeting for yourself and Mr. Smith, Randy Smith, running for school board. And a transcript of this was surfaced by the blog Progressive Devilry. You talked about speaking with Dick Black and Dale Peterson and having them advocate for you to run for this position. Correct. You also talked about, and the quote here is, "Our church has talked a lot about engaging in the culture." What church do you attend, and where was that discussed?
Grace City Church.
There was also, in that same outdoor meeting, a statement from you that pointed people toward a Zoom meeting that was going to be held by Moms for Liberty, local chapter Moms
Correct.
for Liberty, that was going to be held on the 25th of that month. Did you attend that meeting by Zoom?
I did, okay. Yes.
And you're aware that Moms for Liberty has been designated as an extremist organization by the Southern Poverty Law Center?
Well, yes, and my church that I love very much has been called a cult. So this is what I'm talking about, the polarization of society. The America that I grew up in, people could have different ideas And that didn't mean that we canceled them or shout them down or create a mob to, quiet them. These are things that really shouldn't be happening. Everyone has different ideas. We need to respect and listen to everyone's ideas and then give merit to the ideas that are going to bring, flourishing, unity, a whole society, not division.
Well, on that point, can Wenatchee schools avoid becoming a playing field in these culture wars and the kind of divisiveness that you cite?
I hope so. I hope, I think if we respect, have the conversation, especially in the high school level. These kids need to be thinking about these things. But I know that a lot of kids feel that their ideas are in the minority and they have no voice. They should be given a voice. We should all be given a voice. We don't need to make enemies. Everyone can be heard.
Tricia, what do you think is your best qualification to serve on the Wenatchee School Board?
Probably, I think my background is pretty complete for just, having grown up in the schools and in the just being passed along and realizing I didn't have to work for this. I think we need to make kids work for it. I don't think we should continue passing people on if they're not making it. But I think instead we should get in there and make them successful, help them be successful, give them whatever resources they need, but with accountability. My parents weren't super involved and checking on me, so I just kind of moved along, and I didn't feel a sense of accomplishment when I graduated. I think kids should feel a sense of accomplishment, that they've done something and worked hard for this. Hard work is it's a good start to a good life.
Tricia Cleek, candidate for at-large Wenatchee School Board membership. Thanks very much for being here today.
Thank you, Jefferson.
You're watching the NCW Life channel.